Here's the second part of me talking to Randy about wrestling. My fourth one is Bray Wyatt, as I talked about him before,
Yes.
and just a very original concept kind of character and a great speaker. You know, most wrestlers speak very loudly, and he speaks very softly. So I think
Right.
it's something different.
Yep, I agree. He's really good. I think time will show. I mean, he may end up on a lot of people's lists when it's all said and done after his entire career, because he's still
Yeah,
early in his career. But I think he's got
yeah,
every potential. Well, that's not even a sentence,
yeah.
but you know what I'm saying. There's every chance for him. He's got the potential to be that great. I think he can do anything. So
Yeah, I think given that I didn't really watch a lot of the heyday of wrestling,
right,
most of my favorites are current, or in the last 20 years.
yeah,
So my only disappointment is that he's kind of been buried a lot,
yeah.
and they haven't really given him the potential that he deserves.
I think they messed up with him on a couple of occasions in that first run with some
Yeah,
of the stories. I think they had great build up, and then the matches were just like,
yeah,
what are they doing? I remember, and I think maybe we watched this one together where he wrestled Randy Orton, and they
yeah.
kept doing those stupid bits where they'd project weird things on the ring, and they'd have a camera that was straight above the ring, and you'd
Oh
see
yeah,
like worms and
right.
weird stuff, like it's supposed to get in Randy Orton's head, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
It's
Now on
like.
Raws when they were fighting at the barn and stuff, that was really cool.
Yes, yeah. That was kind of cool. I'm
But
just trying to remember what match that was when they did all that projection. Was it Randy or was it somebody else? I'm trying to remember who that was.
mhm.
I could be completely wrong on that. But that storyline was cool because Randy Orton went to the barn and burned it down. Remember, he
Yeah,
like burned his house and they really built it up.
yeah,
But then the match was such a letdown. So it
yeah.
was just like, what are they doing with this guy? Like they just couldn't figure out how to use him.
Mhm.
He's the kind of guy that doesn't have to have a title to be effective.
Right.
Even though they gave it to the Fiend, the problem with that was that they made the Fiend like this guy that was like impervious. Like, he got hit with a freaking. What did he
Mhm.
hit him with in that one match? He hit him with like all that stuff and
Yeah.
the freaking sledgehammer and all this stuff that nobody would get up from, and he still gets up. And you're like, okay, well, it's not realistic this guy would really ever lose. So
Yeah.
giving him a title is kind of like, well, who's going to beat him? So you try to do other things. But
Yeah.
I think if they stay away from that, making him like this impervious,
Mhm.
thing, I think they can do more with him. But
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll give him titles. I don't know if he
And
needs them.
when the Wyatt family lost to the Undertaker and Kane, I thought that they
Mm,
kept losing to them. And I was like,
yeah.
that's kind of ridiculous.
That's a storyline I don't recall that well. I'll have to go
Yeah.
back and try to maybe dig that up and see if I can
Mhm.
remember. I just remember Bray's stuff more than
Yeah.
the other two guys. So I
Yeah.
did like the other two guys when they came back as the Bludgeon Brothers.
Really.
I loved
Yeah.
that because it reminded me of the old tag team
Oh yeah.
division back in the day. Bludgeon
Yeah.
Brothers is exactly, it would have fit right in with Demolition and Road Warriors. The Bludgeon Brothers were perfect for that.
Yeah.
Bludgeon Brothers, come
Yeah.
on with the big mouths. It was awesome. They had matching uniforms, and
Mhm.
I loved them.
Yeah.
I think one of them got hurt, and that's why they stopped. And then everything just kind of went to heck from there. They just kind of fell apart.
So why don't we talk about tag teams for a second? Like, what are your favorite?
Wow. Well, they've kind of started bringing back the division, so it's getting
Yeah.
interesting now. If they can find some guys that are consistent, I like Miz and Morrison. That's kind of cool. They're bringing
Yeah.
that old school thing back from
Mhm.
10 years ago, whenever they first did it. So that was kind of cool. The New Day, of course, is always entertaining. There's some other tag teams. The Lucha House Party, they're always fun to watch.
Mhm.
Incredibly talented, athletic guys. Very fun. Trying to think of other current tag teams that they got going on today.
There's the Usos.
Yeah, the Usos are great. Really talented.
Which I think it would be interesting if they went individual at some point.
Yeah.
Because they've been together for a long time. There's the New Day,
right.
which is kind of more of a faction, but
right.
I think they are overdue to become single stars.
Yeah.
Especially Big E, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just don't know which way they're going to go with that. The problem with Big E for me has always been his mic skills. He was never the strongest when he was a singles guy, cutting promos, which is where I think Kofi really helps.
Yeah.
He can come in and cut like a huge promo, and he can just kind of chime in and be part of that. Although I think he's gotten better, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe now he can do that. But if they break him off, one of them's going to have to be a heel. Someone's going to have to turn on the others, and I just don't know who it's going to be.
Yeah. And of course, the Shield was a great faction.
It was great,
team.
yeah.
I didn't really see them in their prime, but I've seen documentaries of DX.
Right.
And things. But I would say my favorite of all time, maybe the best of all time, is the Hardys.
Yes, Hardys were phenomenal. So good. Just
Yeah.
like Edge and Christian, all those great matches and battles that they had with those guys, and they're still great, you know.
Very cool looking guys. And then they completely reinvented themselves a few years ago with the broken Matt Hardy gimmick. Now, it was kind of lame with WWE, but when they were still with TNA, they had YouTube videos that were going viral that were just kind of more independent. And so I thought those were very creative.
Yeah, it kind of fell flat for some reason when he did it at WWE, which was weird. So, and then they paired him up with Bray, which I thought was weird.
I thought it should have built up to a big feud, but maybe I think Jeff got hurt, so Matt became. And wasn't for many, many years Jeff was the star and Matt was kind of a mid-card guy?
Oh, Jeff had the heavyweight title for a while. Yeah. He had a singles career. His big problem was his personal issues. Yeah. He kept having issues with alcohol and drugs and other stuff, and he would disappear because he got into trouble or he'd get hurt. Yeah. So he's finally gotten that together and he's cleaned up and he's doing really well. I don't know what Matt's doing. I mean, he appeared a while back and then I haven't really seen him, so I don't really know what he's up to.
Well, a few years ago when they were doing that with TNA, I thought that was maybe the first time Matt Hardy was a bigger star than Jeff.
True.
But, all right, so storylines. What is a few that sticks out to you as your favorite?
If I'm talking about, favorite stories or storylines that they ever did in wrestling, there's a lot of really great ones. But for me, I think the easiest answer is going to be anything involving DX back in the day, Degeneration, or even when they came back. DX versus anybody. If you've ever seen any of those old promos they cut, that was some of the funniest stuff I have ever seen. I don't know if you've seen any of it, but they pushed a lot of envelopes and were doing a lot of jokes about, their genitalia and just funny stuff, being just rude. And it was really funny. And what was funny about that was at the time, they're on the USA Network, and the network execs were getting really uncomfortable because they were just pushing the envelope so much. They were always complaining, and Vince was telling them, "Dude, they're really getting upset. I don't want them to cancel their deal with us or take us off the air or have a big problem. You gotta be careful about what you do and all that." And they kept complaining. So finally, DX had cut this promo where they went on a podium. And if you've never seen it, you've got to look it up. It's one of the funniest things you'll ever see. They went in front of a podium, kind of like a State of the Union kind of address kind of thing, to give kind of a public apology, to the fans. And they had this funny music, dun 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 dun, playing in the background, this funny promo, thing like that, playing in the background. And they gave this heartfelt speech about, we apologize, we will never make reference to our enormous genitalia any longer, and we will never do this, and we promise we won't do that, we won't say words like, and they bleep out, beep, 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 And it was this really funny apology. And as soon as they did that, USA thought it was like the funniest thing ever. And then they wanted them to do that stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. Hey, what are you doing? Let's do more of that stuff. Grab your butt and grab your crotch and do this and that. That was really hilarious. And if you watch if you watch the whole Shawn Michaels thing, documentary, Triple H talks about the whole DX thing, and it was so freaking funny because he just says, it's like, what, if you were griping at us and now you're begging us to do it, what do you want us to do, So it was just so funny. And when they came back after those years of being gone and they got back together and they had that feud versus Vince McMahon and the Spirit Squad, dude, when Shawn and Triple H came out and impersonated Vince and Shane McMahon. Oh my gosh, that was a terrible forget. Yeah. Some of the funniest stuff I've ever seen. Yeah. Some of the funniest stuff ever. So I would say any storyline with them was gold.
What did you think of the feud between WWE and WCW, which DX was highly involved in, and you have the NWO going on?
Oh, you're talking about when WCW was actually still WCW, right? Not when they came over, when they bought them all. Yeah. That was interesting, the whole Monday Night Wars thing, because that WWF at the time actually was losing that battle.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was jumping ship and going over to WCW and getting these huge, massive paydays, and then of course the NWO happened, and that's another reason why Hulk Hogan is on my Mount Rushmore, because I mean, him turning heel, that was one of the biggest things that ever happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you thought would never happen in a million years. And if it did, it wouldn't be realistic. And it just, oh my gosh, it was
So I
huge.
found a YouTube playlist that I've been watching recently of the NWO segments going down and starting with Hulk Hogan, or actually starting with Steve Hall or Scott Hall just appearing. And I think that was actually before the Attitude Era and WWE started.
Right.
Maybe changed the way that people did things, because it was completely different.
Absolutely.
As far as my favorite storylines, I love, anytime there's something that you don't know if it's real or not, like the Montreal screw job, which turned out to be real.
That was completely real.
The CM Punk pipe bomb.
Right.
Are a few examples. But then some of the funny things, like R-Truth's Little Jimmy gimmick, I was very entertained, although it didn't get developed very much, but I was very entertained by it. But my favorite would have to be the whole Team Hell No anger management.
Oh, Kane and
Daniel Bryan. Just made me. That was so funny.
That was funny,
and that's really what got Daniel Bryan over, I think.
Yeah.
And to see Kane as kind of this, kind of the nice guy in the
right.
And so I would say that would be one of my favorite storylines.
That's excellent.
Now, what about least favorite? Or is there anything that sticks out?
For me, gosh, I had to think about this one, but it was easy for me to think of what storyline did I hate worse than anything ever, and I'd have to say, man, when Shawn came back after his hiatus, after his back surgery, and returned into wrestling, and made his big comeback, and at the time it was well known that he had gotten saved during that time, from the time he left to the time he came back. He'd found the Lord and gotten saved, and just a different guy. He was just night and day different person, which everyone in the locker room thought was great. He was just a really awesome guy. But Vince thought it would be a great idea to, do a storyline about this and about his faith and use it as a story. So we ended up with a tag team match of Vince and Shane McMahon versus Shawn Michaels and God, where he challenged God to show up and be Shawn's tag team partner and, try to help Shawn out. And the promos they cut for that were just, I want to bring God out to the ring, and they'd shine a spot in the center of the ring and nothing would be there. And Vince would cut this, promo that was just, I don't know. For me, when you get religion into it, it's just, I get kind of uncomfortable with that. There's a lot of lines that I don't, like seeing crossed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one of them. I don't think it's entertaining. I don't think it's, it serves a purpose, unless you're really just trying to tick off those people out there that, watch your programming that might have faith or might, have a belief system, be Christian or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know that this stuff is. And so when they went there, I was like, really? And then it wasn't even entertaining. And what's funny is when you watched Shawn Michaels' documentary, like Triple H thought it was hilarious, not because he's a bad guy or anything. He just thought it was just funny. The stuff that they were doing was funny. But I just didn't think it was entertaining. I mean, Shawn showed up for the match and, and they had like this empty spotlight come down the aisle, like that was supposed to be God walking to the ring with some organ playing, and Shawn got his butt kicked, and it was just this whole, come on, God, where are you? And I just thought, really, where are you going with this? And it just, that to me, I thought was a storyline, and I hats off to Shawn for not getting upset about it and rolling with it, and not getting offended by it. But for me, I just didn't, I didn't find it entertaining. It didn't really go anywhere, and I thought it was needless to go there. There's a million other things you could have done.
Most of the time I've been watching, it's been pretty PG, but I've seen highlights of things that were pretty offensive.
Oh yeah,
Edge and who's the female that they were having sex on?
Oh, Sable or whoever was it? No, Lita. Edge and Lita. Right? Yeah.
I wasn't watching at that time, but I've seen highlights of that.
Yeah, it was supposed to be. They promote it. Oh, it's live on TV. Yeah. Of course, it wasn't. I mean, it was a bit, but even so. But they did some pretty racy things back in the day. I mean, there were times when they would, I mean, in the Attitude Era, that they popped their top off on a pay-per-view. I'm not kidding. I mean, I was shocked by that. They really pushed it on the pay-per-views. I mean, Mae Young whooped her top off on a pay-per-view. I was like, didn't need to see that. So, yeah, there was definitely some things where I think they realized, man, what were we thinking? You know?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. So there was. I wasn't a big fan of what they were doing with even though I love Damian Sandow and he's always very entertaining at what he does.
Right.
But they had him just copying other or mimicking other people.
Right.
And then when he was Randy
Sandow?
Savage Dow or whatever.
Sandow, Randy Sandow.
And then you had the other guy playing Kurt, whatever, playing Hulk Hogan. I thought that was kind of dumb.
Yeah, that's true.
And Corporate Kane, at first I was like, this is dumb, but there's something to it. I think he's pretty talented at what he does, and that was kind of funny.
Right. Corporate Kane actually wasn't that new of an idea. I think they had, for a while, they would take different wrestlers and make them, hey, here's the guy that's Vince's heavy. He's doing whatever Vince wants or whatever Shane wants or Stephanie McMahon wants. Whether it was Kane, it was, I remember for a while it was Kurt Angle kind of did something similar where he was kind of the guy in charge. The Eric Bischoff type thing. I mean, but yeah, Corporate Kane was pretty entertaining.
Yeah. And I can't, when I was thinking about it, I know there's things I absolutely hated or thought was so boring, and I just can't think of them right now. The ones I mentioned just came to my mind.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll think of others.
And since we're talking about things we hate, let's talk about our pet peeves of wrestling.
Oh, man, I love this subject here. There's a lot of things that bug me when they do it. But for me right now, I think the thing that bugs me the most, if I could have anything removed from wrestling, it would probably be matchups that make absolutely no sense. That just, when I see a matchup between two wrestlers, and I know that it's not always about size, like Rey Mysterio, for example, could have a great match with anybody, right? He's a little guy. You could put him in there with the Big Show, right? And he could make it entertaining, and they could do some fun stuff, and it would be a great match. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that matchup is that there's no logical way he could win that, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. If you're going to build something up, I would at least like to think that there's a possibility that either opponent, in that match could possibly come out with a win. Like, it's possible. Yeah. When they did that whole storyline with Ray and Brock Lesnar, man, that bugged me so bad.
Yeah.
Because I thought, there's just no way. Yeah. He's going to challenge him for the title, and there's no way in heck that he could possibly win that. And if he does, it wouldn't be believable.
Right.
I mean, sure, they could give him the title, but it would just not be believable if it was clean. It would not be believable.
Yeah.
So maybe if you had somebody run in and smack him with Brock Lesnar with a sledgehammer and run out, and ref doesn't see it and he climbs on him. That's about the only way that has any believability to me. And so for me, it's like I hate those matches where it's like I just don't want to see that. I don't want to see Ray and Brock. It's just.
Did they used to have weight divisions in WWE, or is it always?
They always had Intercontinental and then the Heavyweight Championship, but really. Yeah. Until the cruiserweights came along, and that was WCW that started the cruiserweight division. They did it first, and now WWE does it, and they've actually got their own show, that 205 Live, which I don't watch, but they have it. But not really, not in. I mean, usually those smaller guys typically were the ones that you saw in the Intercontinental division, and that was really entertaining because they were wrestlers of all shapes and sizes. But most of them were really like athletic. So you'd have like Chris Jericho's and Mr. Perfect and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels was in the Intercontinental division for a while, and Ricky Steamboat, and I mean, some of those matches were some of the best matches, those Intercontinental matches. So, and they still are. I mean, because those guys are typically the really athletic dudes, Ricochet, and they get part of that. So I don't think size matters. But if you're gonna put two guys together, and you want me to watch the pay-per-view, you got to make me somehow believe that it's possible that either person in the match could possibly win it. And there are times that it's not. It's like there's no way. It just doesn't. I won't believe it for 2 seconds. So that is what gets me.
Yeah. I'd say for me, At first I was thinking when a show becomes too wrestling centric and there's no storylines, no characters, or all the baby faces smile, all the heels are angry, and there's really nothing. It's just very generic. But WWE is better about not doing that so much. But I would say when they're determined to push somebody and it's not working, but they keep doing it. Like,
right.
I like Roman Reigns. I'm a fan of Roman Reigns. He has the look and everything, but it wasn't working. I think it would have been natural for them to turn him heel for a while. And then I think eventually he definitely has the talent and look to be a top babyface. But, and then other times they just bury people. They don't want certain people to get that big, and so they don't give them the opportunity, like Damian Sandow.
Right.
Or I could think of others, but just.
I think a lot of that depends on how much Vince, trusts that person to kind of carry, whether it's a title run or whatever. It's all about that with Vince. I mean, once Vince finds a guy that's his guy that he can depend on, you're going to see that person do title runs. They're going to be in a lot of storylines. Mm-hmm. That's how you got John Cena, and I think Roman Reigns kind of deals with the same thing that John Cena dealt with, and that he would come out and it was kind of a thing to boo John Cena, right? Let's go Cena. Cena sucks. I mean, it was just a thing to boo him, but Vince didn't care. He was his guy, he trusted him. And I think Roman Reigns is that with Vince. I think Vince loves Roman Reigns. I mean, once he finds a guy and he thinks, man, this is it. This is the dude. He's going to push him whether we think so or not. He's gonna.
And I guess there's a difference between the wrestling audience and the mainstream. Like John Cena was a mainstream star, but maybe the wrestling audience wasn't as big on him. But like Stone Cold was a big wrestling star, but never really hit the mainstream as much. The Rock did hit both. Actually, he was successful in both.
Huge, right.
So
that's correct.
I suppose that sometimes the ones making money are not always the ones that are the favorites of the wrestling fans either. So.
Although I still think occasionally you do see an anomaly where, maybe something clearly wasn't planned, but the audience dictated.
Daniel Bryan.
Daniel Bryan was one.
CM Punk.
CM Punk was kind of like that. Yeah, he kind of got that thing going, but I was thinking more of Kofi Kingston.
Yeah.
That's the most recent thing that happened. I don't think that was planned. I mean, he went into that Hell in a Cell, not the Hell in a Cell, the Elimination Chamber with 6 guys. And they put him in that match because, I mean, he's incredibly talented. He can do anything, high flying. He can climb up, jump off things. And when you put him in a cage or anything like that, Kofi shines.
Yeah.
And they knew, hey, he'll be great in this match. He'll be entertaining.
Yeah.
And he was off the charts. I mean, people just went crazy for him in that match to the point that I think Vince said, okay, I guess we're about to make a little left turn here, and he's going to have a little title run. And I think that's what happened there. I truly believe that. Because
sometimes they do like that, and then other times, like Damian Sandow got way over with the crowd.
Really? I'm trying to remember Damian really being that huge.
When he was Miz's tag team partner, and he was the stunt double.
Okay.
Do you remember any of that?
I remember that bit, but I don't remember him like having this huge pop. But
I think it seemed like it.
Yeah.
And
I'll have to go back and watch.
No matter what crappy gimmick they give him, he would get it over. So. That was just my memory of him, and but they never really, they just cut him. They never really gave him a push.
Yeah, I think they just sometimes have too much talent and not enough time to use all of them. So I think he was kind of a victim of that. He was this guy that was good, but they couldn't really find a niche, to fit him in, and I think that's kind of why he might have even eventually said, hey, you know what, I can do more at TNA or whatever's out there that, they've got ideas for me, and I'm going to go out there and do it. So that may have been what happened with him.
All right, so why don't we talk about favorite feuds? This could either be in the ring or storyline or mic feuds or whatever.
Okay. I'll let you go first on this one. What do you got?
Sure. When I first started watching at the Ruthless Aggression era and SmackDown, there was several with Brock Lesnar, with The Undertaker, with Kurt Angle. Mm-hmm. Kurt Angle and Benoit had good matches.
Mm-hmm.
More in the last, when I started watching again, Cena and Punk was a good feud.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of Daniel Bryan's feuds. I just remember a lot of storylines. I don't.
He had that really great one with the McMahons. Remember where they kept
Yeah.
Throwing everything.
The authority.
Right.
Yeah.
The authority kept,
that was
not
good.
giving him a chance and kept.
It was frustrating, but good.
Right. And it built up to like WrestleMania, didn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. And
the Shield and the Wyatt family really built up well. They were separate for a long time, and then finally they came in contact, and that's all. And even the individual feuds between them have been really good. So So that's probably on the top of my head all I can think of.
I tell you, if I'm thinking best feud ever, and there's so many, but for me it had to be those last 2 years of Shawn Michaels in WWE. Those two feuds that he had with The Undertaker. Those back-to-back WrestleManias where he had matches with The Undertaker, which very possibly some of the greatest matches ever. That first match with him was between the two of them was incredible. And it had matches before, obviously, in the past, but that was next level when they did those two WrestleManias. And the whole thing leading up to it, and Undertaker, continuing his gimmick of being the dead man, right? And rest in peace, and all of those dark, promos. And Shawn's was completely flipped, where he used his faith and all that stuff, and he had like all white, and the white jacket, and was like light, versus darkness, and they just played it all up really good. It wasn't really a heel, a bad guy in that, but just the way that they played it up, and then it lived up to it. Then the match, the payoff was incredible, and then they did it again the next year. I couldn't believe it, and then he retired. So I'd say that feud is probably right at the very top for me. It's just something that was put together very well, built up very well, and then the payoff. Because nothing ruins a feud worse than when the payoff at the end just stinks. And it's like, really?
That's a feud I'm not too familiar with or seen much of it, so I'll have to definitely look that up. But I have seen, I watched the Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary, and his feud with Vince McMahon looked really entertaining.
With the beer truck and the milk truck and all that stuff. Yeah,
and
that was classic
as far as ratings, wasn't that like the height of...
Oh, yeah, that was the height of the Attitude Era. It was must-see TV. I mean, you didn't know what he was going to do each week.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So, absolutely. That was good stuff right there.
Any specific matches?
You're talking about from...
Any kind of pay-per-view match that sticks out in your head?
So many to count. Like I said, that Shawn Undertaker won.
I was thinking of Undertaker and
incredible.
Mick Foley.
That was in the Hell in a Cell was an incredible match.
Lesnar had a lot of good matches. His steel cage match against the Undertaker.
Right.
Oh, he had a match against against Vince McMahon. Brock Lesnar versus Vince, and there was a storyline there. Yeah, and Kurt Angle was the special guest referee. I think this might have been at Hell in a Cell. I'm not sure.
I remember that.
And at that time, both Lesnar and Angle were the baby faces, and McMahon was the heel. So I was like, how are they going to do this?
Oh, is that when Kurt turned?
No, actually, Brock turned. But what happened was Brock fainted, and Kurt Angle, who was a babyface referee, was like calling for help, and McMahon was trying to get him to do a count out. And you think that maybe McMahon poisoned Brock or something, but in reality, Brock faked it, and he flips up and attacks Kurt Angle from behind. So it was a big spin, so it was a good surprise and everything. But
they've done that on a few occasions over the years. I remember when Vince, quote, bought WCW, and WCW went under, and Vince bought that or whatever, and they kind of mushed everything together, and then they finally had that invasion storyline, where it was like WCW wrestlers, Shane and his guys versus Vince and his guys. And there was a team match. It was like a 5-on-5 or 6-on-6 match. And I watched this recently because I was trying to remember some of this stuff. And Stone Cold was kind of like the anchor of the WWE team. And then, of course, WCW had all their guys, DDP and all this stuff, all those guys. And I remember that they did like a turn like that, where someone was about to get pinned. Someone was about to pin like Shane McMahon or something like that. And Stone Cold jumps in the ring, all chaos broke loose, and everybody was kind of fighting outside the ring. And Stone Cold jumps in the ring and goes over and kicks his own guy in the head and turns on him. you know, and then throws the guy on top of him and they lose. Yeah. No one saw that coming. You know, it was like, what? You know, and they turned, Stone Cold heel. Which, I tell you, back then, over the years, that became harder and harder to do. Stone Cold was one of those guys that I remember they were trying so hard to make this guy a heel. And I forget where in his run this was, but they were trying everything they could to make people hate him, to get him heat. And no matter what he did, people just kept cheering. Yeah. I mean, and I think part of the first mistake was they tried to do it in Austin. They tried to do it in Texas, which is his hometown, and it's like backfired so badly. Yeah. I mean, he said the worst things he could say about the crowd, and they just, and it just didn't matter. And so it's like to do something like that, to turn him heel, that was a pretty big thing. So that worked pretty well then. But I know what you're talking about, where it's
there's been some recent turns that were done well. Yeah. Some of them were a little. You could see it coming, but Seth Rollins turning on the Shield was well done. I will stop part 2 of this conversation here, and part 3 will be on a following video.